Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 388 featuring Isaac Irvin, VFX supervisor over at Carbon VFX. Isaac is a good friend of mine. Really I work with Isaac on Real Steel and a bunch of other things as well. He's always been such a kind person. Like I said, I love going into podcast people I know and I find out these other stories behind them and all that stuff. One thing I can say about Isaac, he is not afraid to jump in with 2 feet at any opportunity that comes his way. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool to sort of see all that journey that Isaac took along the way. So Kristen, what did you think of Isaac?
Yeah, well, he's had quite a ride. He's traveled all over the world working in VFX. So he talks about kind of the amazing places he's been. And then, of course, the amazing movies, Speed Racer, Iron Man 3, you said Real Steel, Robocop, just to name a few. And then we get to hear about his time at DD and working on his first V-Ray show, Real Steel. And then just the amazing pipeline that they had. You both kind of go into that. Mm-hmm. And then the not so good timing of him moving VFX houses. So there's a lot of information there. And now he's moved from movies to the fast-paced life of commercials where he is now at Carbon VFX. And then we get to hear about his Taco Tuesdays, his only time in office now. So yeah, it's a great podcast.
It's really cool. Like I said, Isaac's really fun. It's funny, at the end of the podcast, he sort of starts talking about fishing. And I should note that since then, Isaac and I have actually been fishing together quite a few times. So it's been fun to have him on. I think I'm going to convert him to a fly fisherman before you know it. So it's a lot of fun. Anyway, Isaac is really cool and he's very, very talented and a nice guy. And I'm really glad that he was able to come on to the podcast. All right, we have a couple of announcements. Kristen, what's going on?
Yeah, so I'll just do this quick. You've already mentioned this, but V-Ray 6 for 3ds Max is out. You've discussed kind of all the features, but if you'd like to talk about
we have V-Ray 6 is out, as Kristen mentioned, and also it's out for Max, but Maya will be coming very, very soon, as well as all the platforms. So just be on the lookout for that. You can get that on chaos.com. But there's a lot of cool things like the new Chaos Scatter, decals, displacements for decals, proxy objects have hierarchies and a bunch of other features. So go check it out, chaos.com, for all the information about the new features of V-Ray 6. We have 2 events coming up. Kristen, what is happening?
Yeah, so the first one, you can find these out at chaos.com/events, but the first one will be August 25th, and it will be episode 6 of the Chaos Campus Live show. They're going to discuss the power of personal projects and then tips on how to feed your inner artists and diversify your skill set. And then on September 8th through 9th, we are having 24 hours of chaos again. So it is 24 hours, a series of 12 back-to-back online shows, and we just unite 3D artists, designers, ArcViz, VFX, animation, gaming, product design, all over the world. And then our show in LA will actually be on September 8th, starting at 6 p.m. So
yes,
don't want to miss that.
Very excited about that. In fact, I will be hosting part of it, and I actually will be giving a little presentation on some of the stuff I've been doing on virtual production, along with my good friend Sally Slade. I've been working with her startup company, which is awesome, a lot of fun. So make sure and tune in. You can get all that information at chaos.com/24hourschaos. So again, that is chaos.com/24hourschaos. All right. If people want to know more about the podcast, where can I go, Kristen?
You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast or chaos.com/CG Garage. And if you'd like to watch us, go to youtube.com/Chaos Group TV.
Perfect. And if you guys have any other ideas or comments on the podcast, we would love to hear from you. labs@chaos.com is our email. Again, that is labs@chaos.com. But for now, please enjoy episode number 388 with Isaac Irvin.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, You need to make sure everything has fun now.
One of the things I love the most about this is, especially when I do podcasts with people that I've known for a long time, is that I get to find out about stuff that I never knew about them. So we'll start with that stuff.
Yeah.
What got you into doing visual effects and computer graphics? Like, what was the thing that sort of triggered that interest in you?
Nice. So I'll tell you, I was 19 years old. So long ago. And I was itching to get a job while I was going to school in college because I had a son at the time.
Oh, okay.
So I needed to get to work.
Right.
But luckily, the college that I went to, South Plains College in Levelland, Texas, I was going to school for audio engineering. And we also got taught a bunch of TV and television stuff as part of the degree.
Mm-hmm.
And lucky for me, the local CBS station in Lubbock, Texas, like hired directly from this college that I went to. So I was able to kind of start doing live action or live television production, running cameras for the news, and doing audio and Chiron and tapes and master control. And so I was learning like a lot of cool stuff.
And you were 19 when you were learning all this stuff and doing this?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was working with like people that were in their mid 30s. And at the end of the day, they're just like, kicking back, watching basketball until our shift was over.
Right.
And I'm sit there trying to figure out how the Chiron works, how this works. I was super pumped and motivated. And my supervisor brought in a computer, and this was 1996.
Right.
So, just having experience with a computer in general was really hard back then. So it was super cool. He brought a computer in that had Lightwave 3D on it. And this was kind of around when Toy Story was out, and
Toy Story came out in 95. So yeah.
Just seeing even a rotating CBS logo blew my mind. So I was like, dude, this is what I need to do. Mm-hmm. And so I would stay there till like 3-4 in the morning. And keep in mind, I live in Levelland, which is like 20-30 minutes outside of Lubbock.
Right.
But I would stay there till like 3:30-4 in the morning, just, animating my name and adding shaders and textures to this stuff, not knowing anything about it. Mm-hmm. But it really sparked an interest to where I could see my future in that. So I was super into it. I asked if I could borrow the VHS tape that comes with Lightwave, just so I could take it home and read about or listen to everything that is happening, and then try to recreate it when I go back into work. So that's kind of what really sparked the interest. From that point on, I had it in my mind that the next job that I get is going to has something to do with 3D. Mm-hmm. And there was a television station in Midland, Texas. It was a Christian television station. Mm-hmm. And they were hiring an editor / graphics guy. And so I moved my entire family out there on this like whim that I'm gonna be doing 3D. And the company actually sent me out to a few kind of 2-week courses with an instructor named we called him Lightwave Bob. Okay. And Bob Anderson was his name. And so his course was like 2 weeks, and it covered, every single button on every single panel. And then, your modeling, texturing, taking you through the whole package. So that like really opened up my eyes. And then I probably worked at this television station for over 3 years, mm-hmm. Specifically doing a bunch of Lightwave animations and just different graphics for their TV station.
Wow.
I'm just like racking my brain going back that far.
Right.
But yeah, I think when I went to all these classes, I had, at that point, I started meeting a lot of people, which was really cool. And some of the people were already in the industry, which was awesome. And one guy specifically, by the name of Christian Smith, me and him became really good friends. And he actually moved to Midland, Texas, so he could work with me. So now I had a department of two.
Right.
But we were just so motivated to like make a short film. And so we did that. And since I worked at a TV station, we dubbed like 50 VHS tapes and sent them to everyone in the whole United States and outside the US too.
Right.
And a couple months later, we got a hit from a studio called Absolute Studios that was in Glasgow, Scotland.
Okay.
So my first real job in the industry, I would say, was Absolute Studios in Glasgow, Scotland. Although I did have a lot of, training for a few years, just working in television and whatnot.
Sure. So what's that? Okay, well, that's crazy. The fact that they would hire some guy from Midland, Texas, and Glasgow, Scotland,
right?
Is amazing. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And so packed up, moved to Scotland, and worked on a Nickelodeon. It was like Nickelodeon UK and Canada. It was a live action CG. Like really fun show called The Blobheads.
Okay.
And it was about these aliens that like came out from a toilet and are just living with this family. It was kind of like in the same realm of like Saved by the Bell or Alf.
Yeah.
Just very kind of cheesy but fun for kids. And yeah, and that opened my eyes even more because now I'm doing lighting and, specifically doing lighting and compositing on this show. And I think there was a total of 6 or 7 lighters that were on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And we were cranking out probably, 5 shots a day because it was just so much work.
Right.
And we did this for like 10 months. So we did like an entire season of these shows,
right?
And it was really fun. The best part is that I got to work with people from all over the world, and that's what I really enjoyed. We were working with people that were from France and from Italy, Germany, some people from Scotland, but a lot of them were from all over the world.
Yeah, it sounds like they were not afraid to hire outside. I mean, if they went to Midland, Texas, they're going to go to anywhere to hire people, right?
Yeah.
And so what year was
really
this?
Cool.
What year was this approximately?
I would say 2002 to 2003.
Okay. So yeah, that was probably really hard to find talent that could do that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're calling people in Midland.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's it's the same now with real time. It's the same situation at this point. So it's interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you worked on that show for about 10 months. And what is that the only show you worked on there or?
There was some times where we would work on some other kind of offshoot TV commercial that was called Colin and Cumberland, and it was just these little excerpts of 10-second animations, but they would teach people Dutch. So it's kind of like a public service 10-second commercial where you have these little animated characters doing fun things, and then they'd say one word in Dutch, and then that was it. And so it was just kind of like teaching people different words.
Okay.
So it was just kind of fun little side projects here and there, but generally speaking, it was the Blobheads that I was there for.
Right. Cool. So you stayed in Scotland for 2 years or 1 year?
I stayed there for 10 months the first time.
Okay.
And then I I moved back to Dallas only because I knew that there was a potential that a studio called DNA Productions that worked on Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I knew that they were about to start hiring for a movie. So I moved there, and I honestly moved there and just started working at a restaurant.
Okay.
Just waiting and hope. Dallas was a bit tough because there was only like 3 studios that were there doing animation. The biggest was DNA Productions. The second largest was RealFX, but RealFX only had like 15 people at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another one called Janimation. So while I was there, I put new reels together, sent it out to all the companies, and just kind of waited. In that amount of time, I actually got email from Axis Animation.
Oh, in Scotland.
Which funny enough was on the 3rd floor of the same building that I worked at previous.
Interesting.
So
I just did a podcast with the founder of Axis.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Which was it with Stuart Aiken?
No, it's
or
oh God, I'm name blanking.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's super nice guy. Super nice guy.
Very cool.
So yeah, it's great. That's a great place, and it's still a really strong place.
It was so much fun. That time I was only there for like 3 months, I think. We had worked on a Killzone 3 trailer.
Okay.
That, it was all super top secret. Everyone at the time was thinking that it was all in game. And then here we are, at 2 a.m. working on all the effects and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It was Richard Scott. It was Richard Scott who I did it with.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. He's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So you went back to Scotland.
I loved it so much. And it was both times I had a great time. And then, it's kind of, you work really hard as,
yeah.
But, there's weekend times, and they had an excellent train system. So I got to go, it was like being on vacation.
Right.
Just being able to go to Edinburgh, to Stirling, to up north.
Yep.
And just checking out all the scenery was mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've never been, but I've always wanted to go to Scotland for sure.
Yeah. My favorite by far still is Glasgow. It's a little bit like rough around the edges, but it's such a cool city.
Nice.
And there's a pub like on every corner.
I'm sure.
More pubs than I've ever seen in my life.
I am sure. That's awesome. Okay, so how long were you at Axis for?
So that one only lasted like a few months.
Okay.
And then after we delivered that, we had a great little kind of going away party at Stuart Aiken's house.
Okay.
Which was really cool. We all drank whiskey, said goodbye, and then I came back, and I'd say probably a couple months into that, I got a call from RealFX.
Okay. Now, just to be clear, you were focusing mainly on lighting at this time, or what was your
lighting and compositing?
Lighting and compositing. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Because back then it seemed like a lot of studios combined those two together, unless you were like Digital Domain or something,
right.
But yeah, so I came back. They were looking for lighters and compositors at RealFX, and so I signed a 10-month contract to work with them. And the first show that we had worked on there was a G.I. Joe, an 80-minute G.I. Joe direct to DVD.
Okay.
And basically RealFX at the time had just started blowing up. So it was probably like 35 people in total.
Okay. Had they opened their Santa Monica office yet?
No, they had one building in Dallas and it was like 3 stories and they had like receptionists on the first floor or, like flame suites. And then it was designers and then CG guys.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, it was a pretty small place. It was a very young pipeline. So it was super ambitious that they took on that project. I remember there was points where there was so much geometry inside of these Maya files that we would show our lighting supervisor like 320 by 240 like renders, because anything more than that, like it would crash Maya instantly.
Right.
So we're like, what do you think of this rim light?
Right.
And he's like, yeah, that's good. It's like 2 pixels.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun. It was hard just because it was a young pipeline and they were just starting to figure it all out. But it was awesome. There was a team of, again, like 6 or 7 guys, and a lot of the dudes are now all in LA. I feel like Real Effects was like a boot camp for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
In LA, because I worked, and still there's a lot of people that work there that live here in Los Angeles, which is super cool.
Did you know Chris Bankoff? I think he was in Dallas.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. He worked on all this stuff as well.
Yeah. I worked with
probably around the same time.
I worked with Chris at Sway and at Method. So yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Chris to us was always the nuke comp guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was 2. It was Florian Strobel and Chris Bankoff. I think also Daniel Smith was another one. And these guys were like, at the time, no one even knew Nuke, because I think the only people that had it was people that worked at Digital Domain.
Right.
They actually they sent the compers to LA to get tutorials and stuff.
Right.
From Rob Niederhorst and Mark Rienzo.
Right.
All those dudes came to Dallas and taught us how to use Nuke, and it was, great, awesome experience.
Yeah.
To even know those dudes.
Yeah. I absolutely. I knew all those guys obviously too. So
because you work with them at Sway.
I worked with them at Sway. Yeah. Because Rob was at Sway. Rob Niederhorst was at Sway. Rienzo definitely worked at Sway for a couple of projects. And I think that Rob might have brought in Bankoff.
Oh, cool.
Because I know that Bankoff was like one of the first nuke experts that I knew that never went to Digital Domain. Yeah. Which is interesting. Yeah, he's a really cool guy. So you're in Dallas working at Real Effects and you're working on G.I. Joe. So that's must have been tough.
Yeah, so it was tough, but it was awesome because, when they asked me, they're like, well, we're calling to see if you'd be interested in working on this project. It's, and I'm like, well, what is the project? And they said G.I. Joe. And I'm like, yes, I'd love to work on that. Like, are you kidding me?
Sure.
So I was super excited for that. After we finished that, Hasbro comes back and says, okay, cool. Now we want to do the exact same story, except we want to do the UK version. So it's now, and the UK version is called Action Man. And so we literally had to do the entire movie again, but with totally different characters.
Wow.
So
was this all CG?
Like all CG.
Oh.
And it was rendered using Maya software renderer.
Oh my God.
So it was
painful.
It was painful, and it was in 2004 when
right.
Studios like this didn't even know what a pipeline was.
Right.
I don't know if you know Roy Edwards from Digital Domain.
Yeah, his name's familiar.
Pipeline guy. He at the time, and the only reason why I know him is because he came into Dallas or flew into Dallas to train the pipeline guy on how to open up the pipeline so that we can actually render.
Right.
So I got to meet Roy, and I kept in touch with him, and he'd always ping me, which was really cool, and say like, "Hey, when are you moving to LA?" And I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for LA, but I think it was '07. I
Okay.
went to SIGGRAPH in
San
San
Diego.
Diego,
Yep.
and
The famous
that
SIGGRAPH San
was
Diego,
ah,
2007.
that was such a good one.
Did you go to the aircraft carrier party?
It was so awesome.
Yep.
I always talk about it. Every time I go to San Diego, I'm like, dude, I've been on that ship
Yeah.
and it was
I
amazing.
actually talked to Sean Hendricks, who's the guy who was at Autodesk at the time, and he's the one who created that party, who made it happen. And he's like, how insane it was, and it was
Epic.
epic, epic. Yep.
But yeah, so I went to SIGGRAPH on a mission to find a new job,
Right.
and had now had a decent reel with a good handful of projects under my belt,
Mm-hmm.
and I started handing out demo reels. And honestly, it wasn't until Roy Edwards saw me at SIGGRAPH,
Mm-hmm.
and he just like got my shirt and pulled me to the booth and put me right in front of Paul George
Oh, nice.
and said, "This is Isaac Irvin. You need to talk to him." And so, boom, on the spot, Paul George started interviewing me. And yeah, I mean, we connected. And later on that evening, I met with Ryan Maeda, who was also
Yep.
at Digital Domain at the time. And so it just kind of clicked. I was at the right place at the right time when, and I knew people that knew the people to talk to.
Right.
And and I knew that Digital Domain was on a hiring spree because they were ramping up for Speed Racer.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, long story short, I got the gig. I got a contract. Actually, it was a 6-month contract. And again, I'm like, we're moving. So, so boom, here we go. Move again to Los Angeles, and it was awesome. Like that was like I've never felt more like a rookie in my life
Right.
than when I started at Digital Domain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big
And
jump. And you were working on Speed Racer? Is that what you were working on?
yeah,
Okay.
so I started out doing look dev on Speed Racer, and then continued on to lighting. Needless to say, my contract was extended
Mm-hmm.
because that project went really long.
Really, really long. And
Yeah,
lighting was a real challenge on that show.
it was a beast.
Yeah.
And, this was a whole, it was a whole new pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
but not only that, everything was proprietary. So sure, we were using Mental Ray, but every shader was custom built, which was super awesome. But at the same time, they were building all this stuff while we're working.
Mm-hmm.
So, inevitably it's like, hey, all my stuff is crashing.
Right.
Why is it crashing?
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good eye opener. It was a good, like, here you go, sink or swim moment for me. And man, I just remember working like hard
Yeah.
on Speed Racer. And it was cool because at the very end, the payoff was boom, they're starting a G.I. Joe film, and they wanted me to work on that one.
And you say, I have G.I. Joe experience.
Yeah, exactly. No, so it was really cool. And it was a different team at Digital Domain. One thing that I found out about DD is that, they have multiple little teams, and each one of them is, well, not little, but multiple teams, and each one of them might have a completely different pipeline than the other show. So I got to go in there. That was my first real like RenderMan experience. So that was really cool to be able to learn that stuff. I was working alongside with Hansi, and that whole crew was amazing. And then that rolled over to the Mummy 3.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think it was like Percy Jackson in 2012, which were all fun.
Right.
I mean, all of these were like super challenging projects.
Right.
But honestly, that was my goal. Like my goal when I left Dallas was I want to work on Hollywood blockbuster movies.
Yep.
And I feel I smashed that goal. And and it was awesome, and it was a good feeling, and I had met a ton of people, and I found out like there's all the freelancers, they're like they knew where all the next jobs were going and this and that, so kind of got a head start. And then after I think I stayed at DD for like 3 years just on contract when I moved here.
Okay. Because you and I worked on our first show was Real Steel together.
Real Steel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So after the first round of DD shows, I went to Asylum because there was a lull in work at DD. I went to Asylum and worked on The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which is pretty much like Percy Jackson or anything,
Right.
And the funniest part is that I started to figure out, like, once people see that you're like good at doing cars or doing whatever, like every project from that point forward, you're going to be doing cars.
Yeah, you're pigeonholed. Yep.
So I got to do a lot of like metal objects, and which is fine. I loved it. It was, I would say it was probably like a 5-month stint or something like that at Asylum.
Okay.
And then once we finished that off, that's when I got a call from Paul George, and he was like, dude, we're doing giant fighting robots.
Right.
Do you want to come work on this? I'm like, yes.
Right.
So, yeah. And so I got in doing look dev, and working with Blake Sweeney and that whole team.
That was probably your first V-Ray show, right?
It was.
Yeah.
And it was cool because they were like, don't worry about it. It's cool. We understand it's all new, but here, just play around with it, and see where you get. Man, to be honest with you, I feel like I was just flying by the seat of my pants. And then I got pulled into a meeting where it had like, all the production heads and the supervisors. And I'm like, oh no, what did I do wrong? And then Paul George was like, all right, cool. I guess I'll start this meeting. We just wanted to tell you that you were kicking ass, and we want you to help Blake out as a co-lead for Look Dev and Lighting. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, dude, of course, yes. Yep. I would love to do that. So, that was also another great experience. Again, because this is my first V-Ray show.
Right.
And so, and then I get to work with people like you who, brought V-Ray to LA. I was just like, oh man, but it was awesome. It was such that in my entire career was the best show I've ever worked on.
You're not the only person to say that. A lot of people have said that, including myself, because what was amazing about that show, because I just came off Tron, and Tron was a beast, as you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
And so when you have a really beast of a show you work on, and you've been a supervisor and stuff, they like DD, which I think is smart. They like to give you a break, and they say, how about you just do some lighting? It's just kind of like, get back to your roots a little bit, and it was fun. I was like, okay. And you guys were you were well on your way with Real Steel. You just needed to get through some shots, and it was so stupidly simple the way when you went in there, integration was perfect. Look development was perfect. You went in there, you constructed the shot, you put the lighting in, and it was there. You barely had to do. You could get version 1's final very easily on that show. It was amazing. So well run.
It was amazing.
So well run.
It was. Yep. And I still, the way that production was run, I still use, bits and pieces of all that information that I've learned, because I'm like, dude, I don't know how things were this efficient and worked so well, but they did it right on that show.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was Sally doing a bunch of stuff in the nuke side of things that were incredible.
So good.
Yeah. And Laura Lee did some really amazing stuff as well. So it was so easy. In fact, I think at the end of that show, like I said, I need more shots. It's like, there are no more shots. And I was like, well, I've got another 2 or 3 weeks. And I was like, well, just, maybe some CBBs, whatever,
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe behind the scenes stuff. I don't know, make something cool. It was amazing. It went really well.
Yeah, it was so good. I mean, the animation, just the lighting, the compositing, the entire, every task from start to finish.
Yeah. I think it actually really started with integration. Integration gave such good data that it was the lighting team just like finally had the right stuff, like we could actually do something amazing with it. And
I remember Jeff Bauman bringing me the schematics, blueprints of the lighting grid, and said, here's the whole lighting grid that we used. And we built the whole damn thing.
Right.
It was amazing. Like, we had time to do it right, which was super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and look at where he is now. He's super big shows.
Exactly. So he's running it.
Yeah, he's running it. And
it's awesome.
He was nominated for an Oscar this year, wasn't he?
He was for Black Panther, or no?
I think he was nominated.
Yeah, I'm not certain.
But yeah, they were such a great team. Okay. All right. So that was your second tour of duty at DD. So how long did you stay there after that?
So I worked on Real Steel, and then I believe that was when Jack the Giant Slayer was going on as well.
Right.
Possibly. And I may have worked on a few shots on that.
Uh-huh.
And then I left and worked at Marauder.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I was at Marauder for probably around a year or so.
Right. That's in the marina, right? Yeah, it was in the marina.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was right there on like Maxella, or I don't remember the street. But I got to work on a lot of really cool stuff there. It was more commercials. I actually, the reason why I started there was because I wanted to work on Pacific Rim, because I had caught wind that Del Toro had, a stake in the studio, and he was going to give them the work and whatnot. So I'd gone there specifically to work on that film, but things kept getting pushed. So I think in the meantime, the bigger job that I'd worked on there was this 5 Gum commercial that turned out really cool, and I was nominated for the first and only time for best 3D environment of visual effects society, which was cool.
Right.
And then we actually worked on a Pacific Rim pitch to actually get the movie greenlit. So that one was a really fun project as well. But not the only people that saw it was the executives.
Was it the giant the kaiju on the aircraft carrier?
No, this was like they were in the ocean. It was just, I think it was 2 giant robots in the ocean fighting.
Okay.
But yeah, we won the pitch. It took some time to figure out what work they were going to do. And then I got another call from Digital Domain asking if I wanted to work on Iron Man 3. And so I sadly had to piece out of Marauder because I was like, Iron Man 3.
Right.
So I jumped ship and went back to DD to be lighting lead or look dev lighting lead on Iron Man 3. And that was generally, they were trying to get as the same crew that they had for Real Steel onto Iron Man 3. So we had a lot of the same people that worked with us. But then there was this was around the years when, things were going crazy in the visual effects industry.
Yeah.
One specifically, the whole bankruptcy with Digital Domain. A lot of things were kind of uneasy at that time. And unfortunately, I got through all of the look dev phase, and we were starting to start lighting on shots. And I ended up bouncing from DD only because they were cutting people's pay.
Right.
So I'm like, I can't do that.
Right.
So I jumped ship and went to Rhythm and Hues.
Oh, the irony.
I'm not even kidding you. Yeah. And not even kidding you, I was there for not even 90 days, and then the big layoff happened. And naturally, they had just hired me, so
right.
3 months in, mass layoff, and around that time, it was hard to find work in LA because everybody was going to Vancouver. Most of all of our work was going to Vancouver.
Yep.
So I decided, hey, why don't I get into commercials?
Okay.
Because commercial money or advertising money is a completely different pool than studio money.
Yep.
So I started working at Method in LA and worked on some cool Kia Hotbot commercials, and really enjoyed those timelines as well. Like it was refreshing to just basically come in, and in 3 to 4 weeks you need to bust out a commercial.
Right.
So it was fast paced, but I enjoyed the work and it was fun. And my supervisor was Blake.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, dude, I'll do this all day. And then I could see, the work in LA was drying up as far as movies go. And then while I was working at Method, I got a call from the mill, and they're like, hey, we have this perfect commercial for you. And I'm like, great. And they're like, but unfortunately it's in Chicago. And I'm like, I'll go work in Chicago.
Sure.
Because there's nothing happening in LA.
Right.
So I moved up to Chicago for a few months, which was awesome. And it pretty much opened up their Chicago office. That was the first job that they had in-house.
Interesting.
And met a lot of really cool people. And then when I came back to LA, I started working at the Mill LA, and we did a lot of Call of Duty in-game cinematics, and man, it was a lot. Yeah, it was like, I think it was like 10 months of just Call of Duty cinematics. It was insane how long these things were. But super cool work. The Mill, I loved working at the Mill because they, the quality of their work that they get in was really cool, exciting, looked good. So all the work that I worked on over there, I really enjoyed. And then it was back to method, but this time it was like a GE commercial, and then I got to work on Robocop,
Oh,
the
nice.
new one,
Uh-huh.
which was, and I got to do the look dev and lighting for the old school suit,
Right.
which was really fun. And yeah, it was just me and Mike Dalzell
Yep.
doing lighting, look dev and lighting, and super fun show as well. And I loved working with Nordine, who I'd worked with on Mummy 3 at Digital Domain. And he was my VFX supervisor when I worked on Robocop. After Robocop, I went to work at PSYOP, which was my first time working there. I really liked all of their kind of stylized animation stuff that they were doing. And honestly, at the time, I was only slated to do look dev and lighting. And then 1 week into it, they're like, "Hey, we see that you have lead experience. Want to lead these jobs?" So so I was down to do that, and then the rest is history with PSYOP. And I ended up staying at PSYOP for 7.5 years,
Oh, I didn't realize
which
you were there
is
that long. Wow.
yeah, that is the longest I've ever stayed at one place.
Interesting.
And partially because the crew was super cool and it reminded me of Digital Domain, honestly.
Who was running it the back then? Who was it? What's her name? Was it
Nisa?
Nisa? She was there, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's still
there.
Kind of the managing director there.
She used to be one of the heads of Method.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah, her and Alex Farish.
And yeah, so PSYOP was really fun. We worked on a ton of it was all a lot of Clash of Clans, a lot of Cricket Wireless commercials. You had some random commercials that would come up here and there, Listerine or the Mucinex guy, which was fun to do. But all the while in at PSYOP, I think was probably where I got to go on set. I got to experience, things that I wouldn't normally experience, just sitting in front of a computer. So now I was the guy in charge of getting the data for everybody. And like we were just talking, Jeff Bauman, who could set a better example than him and his department at DD, because I would look at all of this data that he'd bring back for me, and I'm like, God, this is amazing.
Right.
So anytime that I go on set, that's always in the back of my head. Like, what are the things that, when someone's behind a computer, what are the things that they're going to need? And, so make sure that all of that stuff is good to go for the team.
It's the hardest thing. When I was on set, it was the hardest thing. He's like, you've got 5 minutes to make a decision that's going to affect months and months of work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you better make the right choices, get the right stuff, because their opportunities are going to be gone before, oh no, I didn't get the HDR. Well, we're screwed now.
Especially when it's coming toward the end of day and there's still 6 shots that need to be filmed and everyone's just like, we need to go, hurry.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. It's definitely a good, I like it a lot. I enjoy going on set only because, I'm getting the data that I need, and I make sure that we're covered, on our team as best as we can be.
Right.
But I would say that's kind of PSYOP in a nutshell. Just worked on a ton of cool, fun, stylized trailers and commercials and whatnot. And then I had the opportunity beginning of this year, to kind of move into that VFX role officially, a VFX supervisor role officially with Carbon. So yeah, I started with them in January.
Well, tell us a little bit about Carbon. How did that all go?
Yeah, so cool thing is I worked with, I'm not sure if you know Henry Vanderbeek. He worked at Method, kind of pipeline code master.
Okay.
So him and a producer that I worked really close with at PSYOP named Nathan. Nathan was the first one to go over to Carbon. And every time that I would see him, and he's probably been there about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we'd go out to lunch, because me and Nathan, we're friends. We'd hang out, do Friday Hanano's lunches or whatnot.
Yep.
And he'd always be like, dude, what's it going to take to get you over to Carbon? And I'm like, man, I'm open to talking with them. So we had a lot of really good conversations. I got to meet the whole crew. And again, I don't know what it is, but the feeling when you work at a studio and everybody is just awesome. That's how DD was to me. I'm like, dude, why would I want to go anywhere else? Everybody's really smart and really fun to work with.
Right.
So everybody that I had met at Carbon gave me that same vibe. But this time it was like going back in time when, a studio was very young, and they're really starting to grow, or grow into, a bigger, I wouldn't say what their goal is to be a huge studio, but they're definitely beefing up their CG team.
And what kind of stuff do they do?
So, man, we work on, it's a lot more live action CG commercials than what I had worked on at PSYOP.
Okay.
So I feel like right now, a lot of live action CG commercials. And then there's, the 25-30% is really stylized commercials for several different, products,
okay,
or whatnot. But it's really, I've so far have gotten to work on probably 4 or 5 different jobs with them.
Okay. And when did you start? You started at the beginning of the year, you said?
Yeah, in January.
Okay. And how big is Carbon?
So I would say it's no larger than 80 people, but that is New York, Chicago, and LA combined.
Okay.
It may be smaller than that.
Okay.
The interesting part about it is that they're owned by White House Post. So,
okay.
Sometimes you'll be on calls with people from White House Post. So I'm not sure the exact number, but it's somewhere around there. I'd say like 80 or so.
Okay. That's cool. All right. Well, that's amazing. Okay, so you're at Carbon now, and it seems like you're pretty happy, and you got to get yourself a good gig. You started, I guess not during the pandemic, but I guess sort of the tail end of the pandemic. Where's their office located in LA?
It's in Santa Monica. I'm not even kidding. It was like right across the street from where Asylum Visual Effects used to be.
Oh, okay. So yeah, not far
right
from where Method used to be too, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
On Montana, I guess.
Right. Wilshire. Or in 6th maybe, or something.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Somewhere around that.
Are you working in the office? Or are you working from home?
I've been in the office for Taco Tuesdays. And they'll have a taco guy, and it's just a good chance to kind of mingle with all the people that you're just zooming with all day.
Right.
But yeah, I've been to the office, but not for work. And I toured the office, and I think they only had seats for 2 CG people. So just during the pandemic, they've already they can't house any of this. They can house 2 of the CG people, and there's probably over 20 of us.
Right.
So
that's interesting. That's cool.
I think it's really cool. There are people that work in the office, but it's not necessary for us to go.
So what's the state of commercials these days? Because back when I was doing commercials, there were still a lot of TV commercials being made. I don't think the big TV commercials are done in the same scale as they used to be. There's got to be a lot of shorter commercials, stuff for streaming, social networks. So how is that? What's that like?
It's fast. It's like, it's so fast paced now. I feel, with how, even back when I worked at Method, let's say, you'd get a decent timeline to work on a 30-second commercial. I feel like, back then it was 6 to 8 weeks, was in general, like how long you'd spend on a 30-second commercial. And now, it could be anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. So It's definitely, the budgets and the time has gotten tighter, but, the software, the cloud, all these things that we didn't have back in the day, where we were limited to, we only have this amount of space or this amount of CPUs to render your stuff.
Right.
Whereas now it's like, if we need them, we got them.
Right.
So if you're willing to pay the price, you can chew through all these renders relatively quickly.
Yeah. Interesting. What are other? I mean, we're getting towards the end here, but I just want to know what kind of trends have you noticed recently in this area, besides obviously the speed and the budgets and stuff like that. Clouds, and obviously the pandemic has affected things, but have you noticed
the trend? I've noticed that everybody wants to do things in Unreal. Like people are asking our studio, hey, can we do this commercial in Unreal?
Right.
And so it's cool, but it's kind of like how we started this conversation, where it's like, it's so new that there's not many people that know how to even run, efficiently in a pipeline and whatnot.
Right.
But I have noticed that we started getting jobs at Carbon to be done in Unreal, and so we're actually actively trying to build our pipeline around Unreal as well, so that we can use it in those instances where we can.
I've actually been working very actively on ideas and behind V-Ray for Unreal, actually.
Nice.
So that we can actually get the best of both worlds.
Sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
It's very new to me. We got to tour a studio in, it was far away, like Santa Clarita or something. But they had a virtual studio, and we got to check it all out. And again, it's just those things where when you walk in and you actually see how these things are being done, and it's mind-blowing. Like, you're like, dude, this looks so good. When you see it on the LCD panels, it kind of looks a little gamey.
Right.
But when you view the monitor output, and it has ever so slight defocus on it, you can't even tell.
Right.
That's a LCD wall,
right?
Which is so impressive, and I'm excited to actually start working on projects that deal with that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, cool. Listen, we're getting around an hour, and unfortunately, I have to get going soon. But it was awesome talking to you, Isaac. It was great to hear your background. I have a soft spot for West Texas. I lived in East Texas. I lived in Houston for a long time. So,
cool.
But I like hearing about Lubbock and Midland is kind of awesome. There's a great album. Music. I know you're a big music guy. You love music. By a musician called Terry Allen, called Lubbock. and it's
awesome.
And I would definitely. It's a country westerns album from the 70s, and every song is a story that's amazing. So look it up on Spotify. It's called.
I'm gonna jam it after this.
All right.
I did want to mention that I'm completely off topic.
Yeah.
But I've been following you on Instagram, Facebook, and whatnot. But you're like a pro fly fisherman, and the thing is that it'd be one thing if you're doing it in a river, but you're full on in the ocean surf fishing, and I'm just so mind blown by that because I saw
you've been fishing to surf as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so much fun. It's not as advanced as what you're doing, but
you should you should pick up a fly rod. It's a lot of fun, man. I can teach you how to fly fish. I would totally love to teach you how to fly fish.
All right, cool. Maybe that'd be awesome.
Because I go down to the beach once or twice a week, so I'm always there.
It's so nice and peaceful when, just being out. It's so awesome.
And right now it's prime Corvina season, so it's like this is it. This is when they're hitting the beach. So
cool, man. Well, I'm definitely going to hit you up on that.
Okay.
That's awesome.
I am very much up for that.
Cool.
All right. Take care, Isaac.
Awesome.
It was great talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you and the whole audience. And I appreciate the opportunity.